Welcome to In Light of the Gospel, episode 23. I had the pleasure and great privilege of speaking to Henry Wall today. Many people know him as the Spanish preacher. He spent many years preaching the gospel here to Spanish-speaking people in Ontario, and then 14 years ago he was called to preach and teach in Veracruz, Mexico. He's been living there on and off and has established several churches and is preaching there still to this day in his early 70s, preaching 5 and 6 times a week on average. So he's still passionate, he's still excited. And in today's episode, we talk about how he was raised, a very meager upbringing in Durango, Mexico, and then how he was drastically converted under extreme circumstances, given up as completely lost and without hope by the old colony ministers, and then God spoke to him miraculously and saved him and turned him into a preacher. It's exciting to me to see that someone could still be passionate after serving God for so many years, still have no desire to retire or to quit, and to still want to preach the gospel for another 50, 60, 70 years if he could. So I hope you are really blessed by this story, and I hope you share it with people all around. I know many people that could benefit from this. Many German-speaking people, Mennonite people in Mexico, Belize, Paraguay, all over the place, Bolivia, and also many Spanish-speaking people. So I do appreciate you tuning in, and I appreciate the help that you have been to me by sharing these videos far and wide. So thanks again, and God bless you. When I first got saved, probably now 18 years ago, one of the first things I was invited to was to GFC in St. Thomas at a breakfast, and you shared your testimony there.
Seriously?
Yeah. And I remember so clearly, I remember especially when you talked about this airplane that had flown over when you were a kid, and you just thought, what is happening? End of the world or something?
End of the world, yeah. Well, that's what we thought. There was going to be signs in heaven, and then the end was going to be there.
And you didn't know about airplanes?
No, and we had never seen an airplane. So yeah, it was wonders in heaven for sure.
So where was it that you grew up then in Mexico?
No, the El Durango.
Okay.
Yeah. You're probably not familiar with No.
Not very. Right? I know some people now that live in what's that little town close to Durango? Puertas.
Yeah, that's the same thing.
Okay.
It's the same thing with just Puertas. Yeah, it's a Mennonite translation from Patos.
Okay.
Patos means docks.
Oh, really?
And the train station, where the train station was kind of a puddled way there, and there was always docks. And that's what the way that train station was called Patos, but later when the town developed, it was called Nuevo Ideal.
Okay.
Yeah, so, but a lot of people still call it Portas. Yeah, it's just a little plotty
like a nickname almost. So this would, when you grew up there, were you born there or no?
I was born in that area, yeah.
So this was, you said you were early 70s. What year was that? 40?
It was 1950 when I was born.
50.
Yeah.
Okay, so my dad's born in 49, I believe. So very much
a
the
little
same
bit
age.
older, yeah.
Yeah. And so you said, how dark was it living there?
Oh, it was very, very dark. With as you know, salvation had to be earned by works, and then it still was questionable whether thoughts or emotions could have gotten you over the board to the other side. It was very, very religious, and very little hope.
Were you a good kid, or did you obey your parents? Or?
Well, I always wanted to be a good kid. Yeah, it was. I wanted to be a good neighbor, and absolutely, I was trying to stay out of trouble, which didn't work. But I tried to be a good kid.
And back then, in that day, there was obviously very little, if any, electricity and indoor plumbing, nothing like that.
None. Not even generators that would produce electricity. They were not allowed, because anybody would have one of those and would use it at nighttime, they would be excommunicated.
Wow.
Yeah, no, that was not allowed. You had to have these oil lamps, and some would have these kerosene lamps, and they were a lot brighter, but most of them was just kerosene. Well, then there was just a special oil for that. But
so what was your childhood like then? There was probably no going to church for kids and stuff like that.
No. We grew up very, very poor. My dad, I think, in my testimony, I share that, right? That my dad was an alcoholic, and anything that he could sell to buy booze, he would sell and buy booze. So we were very, very poor. There was days that we would all we had to eat was one tortilla divided into three, and that was our meal, and sometimes 3 days in a row like that. I still remember when I have my first pair of shoes. I was 11 years old, maybe 10 years old when I had my first pair of shoes, and of course I only wear them very little. I had blisters on my feet right away because they were not used to. But I had calluses under my feet. I could run on stones and anywhere, and it wouldn't. I could have pickers that long, and it wouldn't bother me. But yeah, no, our shirts back then, the feed, cow pea feed would come in bags with this kind of material, probably a little bit, and my mom would made us our shirts from those kind of materials, or she just this white bags, and she would dye them with dye, and of course that would wash out in short time, and it kind of faded. We were made fun of a lot of times because
not everybody else lived like that.
Oh no, not everybody else, but because of my dad was such a
Isn't that interesting that they would be so stern and strict about electricity and technology, but at the same time, somebody that's a drunkard and is not taking care of their family, the church wouldn't really do anything about it.
No, they would do some, because I do remember my mom. They would have in every colony, they would have one house that was belonged to the group, and they would allow those to live in there without paying rent or anything if they couldn't. So we lived in one of those houses, so a little bit of help was there that way. But other than that, I do remember, and I'll tell you the story, and I think a lot of times that I have struggled in my life with pride, false pride, of course, and there was, my mom was a little on the heavy side, and she would go down the street and ask for food for us, like that we would have to eat, and kids would from home scream, "There goes the pig," begging for food for piglets. And that hurt so bad at that time. I mean, she was my mom. She was poor. She maybe wasn't dressed the most properly, maybe not even cleaned the most proper way, because back when you have nothing, you can't take proper showers or whatever. And so and it's still to this day that then I have a hard time receiving gifts or asking for help.
I see.
Because I think that kind of trigger it from there. That sounds like, to me, it's begging, and I hear that echo, right?
Don't want to be that again. Don't ever want to go back there.
No.
Did you have a lot of brothers and sisters?
I have from my mom and dad, from the both, there is 5, 6. We were 6. One passed away, and we are still 5 left.
Okay, because I know the Harder family, so like John and Susan Dyke, and I knew the Harder family well growing up, and I knew that you were their uncle. And then also the Aggie Ham, that family, right?
That is my wife's. From my wife's side, okay. From the Harders.
So that's where I heard about you. But when I often share my testimony about how I came to know the Lord, it sometimes will start in grade 9. I was taking guitar class at East Elgin School, and I was sitting next to your son Abe.
Oh, really?
And Abe turned to me one morning on a Monday, I think it was. The weekend had just been over, and he asked how the weekend was, and I told him what I had done. We went to church and all that. And he says, "Are you a Christian?" And I said, "I try to be." And he looked at me all confused. He said, "What do you mean you try to be?" I said, "Well, I can't say that I am. I won't say that I am. If I say that I am, then I'm proud." Because for me it was, if you said you were a Christian, if you said you were saved, then you were taking pride. You thought that you had gotten good enough, right? And he looked at me completely confused. He's like, you either believe the gospel or you don't. And I'm like, well, I said, my mom had told me often that the Christians were called Christians first in Ephesus, right? So people called them Christians, but they didn't call themselves Christians. So that's how she took that verse. And so I always say, I said, I can't say that I'm a Christian. If you call me a Christian, I'll accept it. But because it was all about my performance. It was about how good I was, right? And so, you know, it's such a different way of growing up. But in Mexico, it would have been much more so yet, right? Where you have no understanding of the gospel, no clarity on salvation, right?
No. It is thought that you have to be good enough to make it to heaven, and you cannot know that for sure. That is when you get to heaven, you'll find if you pass the door or where you'll be thrown out.
So tell us a little more about growing up then. After 10 or 11, you got some shoes. And what year, how old do you think you were when you saw that airplane?
I was only been 7 years.
Okay.
Because in my testimony I shared that I think if you remember there's I stayed by the well there and kept on crying, and Mom would come back and ask me, why are you crying? And a little while ago, everybody was crying outside and thinking this is the end of the world. And no, it wasn't. No, we were going to just go off and
go back to normal.
Keep on living the back life. What about if the next hour it does happen then? And will we then do the same thing we're doing now? And I was 7 years old, and I do very vividly remember I had a Spanish friend. He didn't know any German, I didn't know any Spanish, but we were so close we could communicate. We were together, and I asked my mom if it was possible that he could become a Mennonite so that he could get to heaven too, right? That's what I thought you had to be. You had to be a Mennonite, Schlobexen, and your overalls, and that's what's the only chance that there could be that you could make it to heaven. But yes, I was 7 years.
What was her answer then?
Well, she never did give me an answer. She just said everything was okay, come and eat. And so I did. I don't know, maybe because of the same thing, her upgrown. If I tell him something else, and he might get in trouble. So I probably was a little bit verbal since I was a little bit.
But it sounds to me like even then you already had a concern for people outside your own community, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Right now, when I look at where God has led me in the latter years, it was definitely already back then. But if you would have asked my family and my growing up, if anybody would be from our family would live in the Spanish circle, because my dad left us and he married a Spanish lady.
Okay.
And I have 8 brothers and sisters from that mom.
Wow.
They live all here in Elmer area, and so what I was going to say, I totally can see now when I look back that there was a calling, but I was taught that they were the world and you should never have anything to do with them, and so I tried to shy away. I was 23 years old when I started learning Spanish. I didn't know.
You didn't know Spanish?
When we got married, I did not know enough Spanish to rent a motel.
I see.
No.
I would have assumed that you would have grown up speaking Spanish.
No, I didn't want to learn Spanish because I want to be a good Mennonite.
I see. Interesting. So they were the Weltmenschen.
They were the Weltmenschen, absolutely, yeah. So
the Mennonites are pretty racist, eh?
They are very, very, very racist because, and we talked about it yesterday, that if there was Spanish people who would come over, or even their workers, they would hire them to work for them and for the harvest and stuff like that. Excuse me. They were not allowed to come inside and eat. The food was brought to them, and if there was a beggar coming, they would not even take him a plate with food to eat outside. They would bring him with the hands, probably, or in a napkin, if there was something like that. But they were like almost treated like the dogs, yeah,
Oh.
like a dog, yeah. Yeah, it was. Of course, then my dad being married to a Spanish lady. That always, the saying was a lot of times like father, like son, right?
Mm-hmm.
We were labeled very much, or to a certain extent, shunned a little bit, or feared in a way to say that people were kind of afraid to be around us because we would end up in the same place where my dad was, right?
I see. So there again, I think back to what I've heard about you, or what Mennonites thought about you personally, and it almost seems like maybe God was preparing you from a young age to be okay with not being accepted. Because most Mennonites around here just thought, oh, that's the Spanische Prediger, he's way heavier shooting, and don't listen to him, kind of thing, right? And so you always have been a little bit shunned from Mennonite culture and people, eh?
Yeah, it is very, very familiar to me to be a little bit inferior and a little insecure, and that, and so yeah, it was it was not a strange thing for me. Even in school, when I went through school, if something happened in school, it didn't matter whether it was me or somebody else had done it. It was always blamed on me.
Is that right?
And I would get spanking, sometimes up to 3 times a day in school. I was getting spanking for something I didn't do. And then I finally decided I'm going to get spanked, so I might as well just do something.
At least I felt like I deserved it.
Yeah, there was got a little, not intentionally, but kind of getting careless a little bit of who cares? If I'm going to get spanked anyway, so I'm not going to be careful anymore. So yeah, but I always tease about this. I was so loved in first grade and they call it Fibla, right?
Yeah.
That they kept me there for 3 years because I was really good in memorizing, was really good in writing and math and all of that, but I was slow in reading.
Okay.
And for that reason, I had to stay. And then there was a lot of favoritism back then, and it was allowed to the teachers would have their favorite kids. And I was certainly not one of them. And so that was another reason why he would never come in and help me. If I would ask him for a question, what does this mean or that mean? Like we would read in High German, speak Low German. I had no clue what we were reading. And for me, it was reading something you don't understand. Till this day, I just don't take much of an interest in that.
I see.
And so that was a downfall in my, until a later year, at the age of 11, I had to start working full time at this preacher's place. They didn't have their own kids, so they sort of wanted to adapt me, but I was working there. I started working there at the age of 11, and then I would have to still go to school for 1 year. Because we had to go to school until 12 years old, right? And so that teacher really took time with me, and then within 3 months I became his helper. I went up, and
then you could read better.
I could read better. Reading has never really been my strong point, but he didn't focus not necessarily on just that one point. He just an average, and so yeah, and then. He was a really good teacher. I really, really thank God for him in my life, but living there at this preacher's place, us growing up so poor, we just go to the table and just grab our food and eat, right? And these couple, they were very, very particular. You had to hold the knife right. You had to hold the fork right. Chew with your mouth closed, and
don't eat until everybody's here.
Yeah, and then just slowly, and you could never get into the house with the way you came from field. They had in front place where at lunchtime you just change clothes and come in neat, but at nighttime you had to first take a shower and then at the end of the day you take a shower and then come and...
And you weren't used to that.
Come on. We were walking barefoot among
shower
coats.
once a week, you've done good, eh?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely. And we were walking barefoot in cow manure. And I mean, that was... And it was so strange. I felt so... I could never... I had a horrible time there. And I ran away from that. I had to work there for a year, 3 months. I was out of school by then. Then I escaped and I got a real good spanking.
So you actually were living with them?
Yeah. Oh,
Had
yeah.
your dad left already?
He had left when I was probably 6, 7.
Oh.
I do remember. I don't remember a lot, but I do remember that Mom was standing outside. He walked to the laneway to the street, towards the street. He was about halfway and yelled back that he was not... she didn't have to worry about him anymore. He was never going to come back anymore to be there. And he did probably come back about 2 or 3 times for some other reason, probably to see the kids or something. But yeah, he was very violent. When he was drinking, I think he would lose it. And just my mom, I found her about 3 times that I can remember that I thought she was dead, unconscious. And it was for us. It was when he left, and I always want to be careful when people say, I don't want to defame people, but when a person is under that circumstances, they're bound. And I learned this to understand this later, that there was a different power behind him that would control him.
Couldn't control himself.
He couldn't
anymore.
control himself, and he later had an accident in his life where he almost died, and he called us all up, and he would explain that he had all the intention. He wanted to come and see us and bring us something. Then he saw this in this ability to bring us or to give us what he wanted, and so then that brought frustration in his life. Instead of giving us a hug or something, he would just then beat us up or something.
Oh man!
It was But I do, and it took years to heal and to understand those kinds of behaviors.
You were able to eventually kind of forgive.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, me and my father, we reconciled when he had that bad accident, and then I gave them a hug and I told him I've forgiven him, and I went to see him later in his life a few times, but he would never accept, and he didn't want to accept any gifts from me. At that time I had already gotten married, and we were very, very well off. I'm not rich, but very stable. And so he would sit there on his bench there, no jacket, and he had a little bit of a garage, and he'd sit there and shiver. And this guy came back walking by there, selling jackets, and I thought, I'm going to buy him a jacket. And he looked at me and he said, you bought that jacket because you felt sorry for me, right? In my ignorance, I said yes. He took that jacket, threw it back at my face and said, don't ever come here and give me anything because you feel sorry for me. I was responsible for you guys. And I don't want to need this extra guilt on my life. I've already been condemned day and night for not taking care of you. And I said, well, don't take it that way. Just. And then finally he came down, and I said, well, if you want to give it to me because of a gift, then I will accept it. But don't feel sorry for me.
I did this to myself.
I deserve it.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So if you could kind of tell a bit of that story again of how you came to the Lord. I remember you became an alcoholic too, if I remember correctly.
Yes, I did, yeah. I never wanted to. I always, since the way I grew up, it was just that bad picture. I grew up with this good intention. I was going to be a good father, good husband, and hitting a lady. I never, since I was a kid, I always thought that if they deserve a spanking, that's dad and mom's chore, not mine. Not anybody else. And so I was with that in picture in my mind, the way I grew up, I wanted to be a good man, and I think I was. We got married. I had a couple of cows and horse and wagon. I had quite a bit of stuff because growing up as an orphan, my mom died when I was 14.
Oh man!
And so all the money that I would make was then mine. And of course, at the age of 15, cancer came back on my throat. I had cancer since I was a little kid. I don't remember that, but from what I was told later. And so then I had to go to the doctor and borrow some money. But from there on, I did well.
Working hard,
and then where I was staying at that time, they gave me a calf, and that became a cow, and I would start selling milk. So I had gathered up some money when we got married. We had my wife had two, and I had also a couple of cows, and so it didn't take very long. We bought a farm, 17 hectares of land, and we did very well. But we lived outside of colony, like you hear in a farm type of isolated. And the youth would come over. I was always. I think I got married way too young. I should have stayed another 5 or 6 years in the youth. Because I was very youthful. I loved the youth, and I loved to hang out with youth. I didn't want to hang out with my married man. I wanted to hang with youth. And so I would allow the youth to come to our place behind the colony. They could bring their music, which was illegal to have. And then they would drink there, and you could do it. I thought, if you do it here, you're not getting in trouble or getting somebody else in trouble out there in the colonies. Right? And so I was thinking I was helping them, and I had some wonderful time with them. By this time, some of the kids came around. But then these young people that would come over, they said, well, we don't want to come back here anymore because we drink here all the time, and you don't drink, and we feel uncomfortable. And I thought, well, if that'll help you, I will just take a little bit of a drink, and very tiny bit. And that was it. For a couple of years, probably did that. And one day I felt like I went to town, and I thought, I've been drinking from these guys' stuff. I'm going to buy a bottle, and I'm not going to drink it. I'm just going to give it to them. And so I think that's where I gave the devil the hand.
Really?
From there on, it was very frequently that I would buy, and then it became heavier and heavier and heavier, where I was totally dependent on it. I would drink every day at least a liter of tequila, that hardcore tequila, and sometimes another, until I did that for 3 years, day and night. When I wasn't sleeping, I was drinking.
And you can't think of why you would have felt a need to drink so much? Your life was good at that time.
Was good, but my body became dependent on it. I felt like shaky and kind of insecure, scared, and so then the drinking would
calm you down.
Yeah, and so I did that most of my drinking I didn't do social, and bars very little, because a lot of it was isolated in my room probably, and especially when I felt like I had a little bit too much, then I wanted to go by, and of course I never wanted my kids to see me drunk, and they couldn't. Even though in my story I tell that where I got cirrhosis and I would throw out blood up to 8 liters some days, not every day, but there was days
with throwing up blood.
Blood, yeah.
It's been so long, I forget a lot of the details now of your story.
And so then I didn't want my kids to see it. I was locked them up in my room, and I wouldn't allow my kids to come in there. My wife would come in there, up to the point where I couldn't get up anymore, and I would still keep drinking until we went to a doctor and to see if there was still a chance. And I did a lot of times. I went to a doctor to see if there was some sort of help for me to quit drinking. But there's just no magic. There is just no. If a person is, the only solution is Jesus Christ.
Amen.
There is just no medication or witch doctors, and I tried all of it.
Witch doctors?
I didn't care what it was. I just wanted to quit drinking, and I couldn't. So until this point, up to this point where we went to the doctor and he sent me home. He said 2 weeks, and that was it.
You're going to drink yourself to death.
Your liver is so far gone. You will live the maximum 2 weeks, and that's it. I was excommunicated by then.
Wow.
And of course, heaven is locked for you, and the way you were brought up, right?
Yeah.
So you're going to hell, and in 2 weeks you're going to be in hell, right? And I thought my wife by this time, she had to clean me and everything, because I couldn't get up anymore.
And you were like a young man, 25-ish. 30?
Well, I would have been 29.
29.
It was a little bit after my birthday, 30th birthday, that I gave my heart to the Lord.
Okay.
And where it changed. But yeah, it was my wife's birthday. She was October 21st. She's born. That's her birthday, and mine was October 17th. So on her birthday, I gave my heart to the Lord, and alcohol was the end of it.
But that was in that 2 week period then?
That was in that 1 week had passed away.
Okay.
And then we called the bishop.
Like the Alta stuff.
Yeah, the Alta stuff. Yeah, to one more try to see, and then and we knew that there was a process of being taken away, the excommunication.
You were already excommunicated at this time?
I was excommunicated.
Because of the drinking?
Well, part of the drinking, and part of because I was driving truck quite a bit by this time, and different things come with drinking, right?
Yeah.
Adultery and other stuff. You should see that.
So you felt like you were following in your dad's footsteps in a lot of ways?
Well, absolutely, and they said it too. People would continue saying it too, and then I thought, here I am trapped in the same trap.
And afraid that your wife was going to end up like your mom, eh?
Well, exactly. Well, I was never violent. I never ever in my life did I ever hit my wife. I verbally would have.
Even when you were drunk?
No, I've never hit my wife. Never. No. That was not my permission to do it.
Nice.
But yeah, treating her, and she was of course very worried about, and why did we start drinking like that? And she would ask the Lord, why, Lord? And later on in years, of course, way later, the Lord give her the answer for that, that God was preparing us to help people that were helpless. Mm-hmm. And we could have never understand them if we wouldn't have walked.
So he was letting you and your selfishness and your upbringing take you to a place that is not good, that he doesn't want, but that he could eventually take that and redeem it and use it for his glory.
Yes, exactly. And that's
he works all things together.
What the devil meant for evil,
that's right.
what was a mess became a message.
Yeah. So there you are, 1 week left to live, and you call the bishop, and what does he say?
He comes in, and I was like in that corner was my bed, and I was laying in bed. Door was in that corner. He comes in, stands in front of the bed, folding his hand in the back, and asks me, "What can I do for you?" And I told him the circumstances, and I said, "I really don't want to go to hell." And then he said, "You should have thought about that sooner. Where you're going, everybody knows." Turns right around and walks away.
No chance for confession, reconciliation?
No, he just right away turned. You know what? That sounds really bad, right?
That sounds really bad.
But you know what? Now I think back, and I totally, and everybody that will listen to that, I would like to say to you, it is everything works for the better for those that love the Lord.
Yeah.
Even that point there, it was so hard, so painful. I cried. And I thought, how can it be this man of God would say that there is no hope? And I needed it so bad. But I learned one thing through that. There is no other way of salvation than through the Lord Jesus Christ.
That's right. So the one hope on earth that you had is now gone.
It's gone. And I had to learn it the hard way, that there's only one that died for human beings.
Amen.
And it wasn't the bishop, it wasn't nobody, it was only one that had died for the sin. And that is the most precious thing for me, that I can, and the Bible talks about, cursed is the man that will trust in man. Mm-hmm. And I can totally understand what that means now.
Amen.
And that is so valuable to me, and even to preach now that gospel.
Yeah.
And I always say this to people. I said to people, I will probably give you an occasion to fall or to cause you to stumble. But you have a choice, the same as I do. Stand up and walk and put your eyes on Jesus.
Amen.
Or lay there in the mud and die.
Yeah.
It's your choice. I'm not going to pity you. I certainly want to help everybody.
That's right.
But I will not give you a false crutch.
People come to our church too, and they're pretty excited about what they see happening. There's a lot of good families and some good preaching and teaching.
Yeah.
And I'll often remind them, I heard another preacher say it once. He said, if you're excited about what's happening here, stick around a little longer. You'll be disappointed soon.
Yeah.
So don't trust in us. We got nothing to offer you except for what who he is, right?
Absolutely.
So then what transpired? How did you get the gospel then?
Well, it was... We were then at that moment. In 1980, I was go back there a little bit. It was my wife's birthday. At 12 o'clock, the bishop comes in the house, and he leaves like that. And I had a .38 handgun with 3 explosive bullets in it, and I was going to stick it in my mouth, blow my brains out, so my wife wouldn't have to clean me for
the next week or
for
two.
the next week, whatever, yeah. And I thought she's going to get over it, but I don't deserve. She doesn't deserve it. I don't deserve doing it to her. And so, anyways, then I got paralyzed. I couldn't close my eyes, couldn't move a finger, and these room fills up with demons, right? And they're all blowing fire at me. And I was breathing that fire. It was just horrible, and the laughter, the mocking.
And you couldn't move.
And I could not move. I could not scream. I could not close my eyes, not to see this. And so then I started hearing this voice. Started for me, it was from the west. No, from the south. An echo, like in a mountain. They said that healthy don't need a physician but the sick. I have not come to call the righteous, but sinners to repentance. And then in my view, I would look at the bishop there and think, well, that's where the righteous. And so it kept on. I must have heard it about 50 times, like an echo. Echoes on and echoes on and echoes on until on the north it came up to there and it stopped. And then I said to the Lord in my mind, I said, Lord, if you give me another chance, I will serve you wherever, whenever, and whatever. Little did I know what I was saying, right? Mm-hmm. I wanted to renegotiate with the Lord a couple of times later, but He hasn't accepted any renegotiation.
Do you know where that verse came from? Like, you didn't read the Bible?
No, I didn't know. I had no idea. When I read that Bible verse, man, I just jumped around. That's God spoke to me. And for some reason, I knew that was God speaking to me, right? Because I then said, Lord, if you give me another chance, right? And that's where things start changing.
You would have heard that in German, though.
Yeah.
Well, how would it be said in German?
Ik ben niet gekomen voor de gerechten, maar voor de zonde.
Okay.
Nee, dat is de zonde brengt niet in dag, maar de kranke.
And that's what you heard.
Yeah, and next thing you come to the for the gerechten, but for the zonde te realizen.
Yeah.
And so and so that somehow it clicked to me. No, there was quite a number of years where I had never heard the gospel. I never had any training. I wanted to be a lone rangers to defend the helplessness. So I would dress in black and wear this black cowboy hat, white belt, and then go back to the Mennonites and try to tell them that God had changed my life. Didn't work very good. Did not work well at all.
I see.
Well, but then there was a revival meeting in Port Rowan, here in Port Rowan, where the Satara twins were preaching there.
But this happened in Mexico.
When I got saved, yeah.
Yeah.
But then we came here, yeah. Okay. That's right. Let me go back a little bit. Yeah. Then we my life got straightened out, but this excommunication thing never bothered me a bit.
You never got lifted?
Never worried up. Later, yeah, because somebody talked me into it that I would, for their sake, because I had a butcher shop and and I couldn't have any workers. Those that worked for me and they needed the job, they were told that they couldn't work for me because I was excommunicated. It was put this pressure on for me to try to get me back, right? I think that's at least how. But so he begged me. He said, if you don't do it for your own conviction, your sake, do it because the only way that we can provide bread on our table is what I do here for you. And so then I did, and I felt terrible when I did it. And when I came home, I felt like everything was so far away. It felt horrible. But then then we came to Canada.
Okay.
Very shortly after that, I worked for a little while in a cheese factory as a manager, and but then my brother tucked me into. I think my brother had already accepted Christ, and I think he saw that where I was, I would not get any help, and that I needed to be out of there. And he had done all our paperwork to become Canadian citizenship. He came and got us, and then we came here to Canada. And then I still wanted to go to the Old Colony Church, right? Because that's where I grew up. And then it was at that moment when the Old Colony Church here split.
Really?
Was there in Elmer by somewhere, I don't know.
This is early 80s?
Somewhere's, yeah, early 80s.
Okay.
And then there was a couple of guys in the church from the leadership. They wanted to have a fight right in the church. And I thought, I don't want to teach my kids this stuff. So I don't want to come here. And that's when we started to kind of search for.
Do you know Mr. John Bayman, older gentleman that goes to Lighthouse Gospel now? I think he told me about that story. He was I think he was like a Fushta maybe.
Yeah.
And he said these men were smoking and telling him how awful he was for believing the gospel, and there was like almost a fist fight and stuff.
Yeah.
So you would have been at that meeting.
Yeah. And so then I decided we're not going to go to that church, and then I don't know exactly how that developed, whether we went to church. My brother was always, when there was some kind of meal, they would invite us. That he probably figured I would not come to church unless there was something like that. And one day I told him, I said, "Listen, we have enough food. You want to just invite me for church when there's something special? Don't do it no more." And so different church groups would come, and you might have got us. I remember that the first winter that we were here, it was really rough, and they would bring us food and clothing and stuff like that, and I would observe them, and I thought, these are the AYU children, these are the crazy guys, these are the guys that are doing actually what Christians should be doing. Mm-hmm. So then I started to do this barrier away, right? Where I was just say, well,
you could see that the old colony people were clearly not living.
Well, most of them
what
were.
They professed. And when God raised you up out of that bed, and you somehow got over your sickness and you stopped drinking alcohol, at that time you still didn't really understand the gospel.
No, I didn't know. Just that verse that I had, no. Other than that, no.
But you turned your heart to God in some sense. God, if you heal me, I'm going to serve you.
And then I did start reading the Bible.
Yeah.
And I thought somebody had changed my Bible, because my mom gave me one of the thick Bibles, big Bible, and most of the people back then had those. They were really big Bibles, and I looked in the cover and I thought, this is certainly not that Bible that I used to read. And then I would look in the cover, but my name was there, so it could not be a different one. It was still the same writing, and I thought, this is so weird, because now all of a sudden I see light in the word, right? Where it always was judgment and condemnation, right? And that's what I always got in. And even in preachings, I don't know whether they preached good news or what, but I always thought, and for some reason, going back, I was a very little kid, I had an admiration for ministers. I kind of, in me, I wanted to be one. And that before I got saved, at that point, before I started heavy drinking, even the preachers, the bishop one day called me and said, "It's too bad you're going the road you're going, because we have an election coming up in a couple of weeks, and we have you on top of the list for being part of us."
Wow.
And so I thought, me reading a sermon like that and not giving people hope, forget that.
I can imagine you preaching at Old Colony.
Yeah, yeah, especially now, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and anyways, that's we came here to Canada, and then we started going to church. And our first church that we went to is consistently where we started serving. It was a lighthouse. It was lighthouse at that time. Was
Houghton Center.
Houghton Center, yeah.
Yeah.
And we were there. We served the Lord there. I was a Sunday school teacher and maintenance. Well, I started off maintenance, and went back up to Sunday school, adult Sunday school teacher. And at that time, we started with the Spanish, reaching the Spanish people. Well, what we wanted to do is, we wanted to get these people out of the gambling halls and nightclubs, because I thought this was so silly. I went with them, even after I was saved already, right, back here in Canada. We'd go to bingo halls, because I was a joker. I was a joker, would tell a lot of jokes, right? And they loved it, and they would pay me my bingo cards to go with them, and then on our way laugh about my jokes. And some were not very clean jokes, because I hadn't grown up in the gospel. So then we started something. We were this was after that revival meeting with the Satara twins.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah, I kind of interrupted you there.
Yeah. So no, it's fine. So then this revival meeting starts, and then I decided enough of walking outside the fence. It's all in or all out, but I'm not gonna. I was no way of all out. That was not a question, but I was done with the halfway.
I see.
And I was going to live this life, and I was.
Is that when you would say you gave your heart to the Lord, or when you first trusted Christ, or?
Where God really did a change in me was back then. I did really. I mean, a big thing happened in me, and I could feel that there was a big cleansing in my heart, right?
Yeah.
But I would always point back at my be born again was obviously done. And I said this because we had a black dog. He would hate me. The day I gave my heart to the Lord, and when I said to the Lord, whatever I will do, if you give me that chance. That dog came, licked my hands, and I kicked him, and he would come right back. What in the world?
Well, you said on Sunday that the animals often preach to you, right? So this dog was preaching to you.
So this dog was totally telling me, you're a different man, right?
I see.
So yeah, and then we started working here with with these men, and we would invite whoever, didn't matter what color, what race it would be. Spanish, German, and come. What we would do is we had the Spanish music, gospel of course by this time, but this time they have different styles in Spanish, ranchera gospel, where the style is still that lively, but the words are different. And we would invite them to come and listen to Spanish music, and then we would have some fellowship. And I said, "Is there going to be dance?" "Oh yeah, sure." Yeah. I would just
whatever it takes, come on in.
lure them in. And I was, of course, I thought, you're going to dance to this music. And some of them, when they were a little bit drunk, they would for a little while, but that didn't last very long. And they'd come down. And so that's where it started. You
started preaching to them.
And well, yeah, they would. The Spanish people, they would then ask. The Mennonites, they would come one or two times, and then they wouldn't come anymore, right? Those old that would go to that. But Spanish people said, "What is this? This is not the normal settings. What is this?" And then we'd read maybe a psalm to start or something. And I said, "What?" And then they started asking, "What does this Bible verse mean?" Well, I don't know either. But I'm going to study, come back next Friday, and I'll explain it to you. So I would study through the week. these, and then give them an answer what that meant.
Yep.
And they kept on growing and became a Spanish group.
Wow.
Yeah, and
that was out in a Langton area too, or
it started. We were living actually here close to Vienna.
Yeah.
At that time, close to Purple. That's where it would start, in our living room, and then we moved to different. I think at Bell Mill Church for a little while, and Houghton Center maybe a little while. Then we rented the whole little while, and we ended up in Luton.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's when we bought the property in Elmer by close to McDonald's.
Yep. Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, and so I never wanted to be a pastor.
No.
In my heart, my passion has always been missionary.
Evangelism.
Yeah, evangelism more than pastoring. But I said to the people, if you help me do my job, then I will do whatever I can do for you. And so I've been called a pastor for many years, probably, since here the Spanish church day.
Pastor Henry Wall.
Pastor Henry Wall, and still I'm called. But my passion is mission and yeah.
So this would have been mid to late 80s when you established the church here?
Yeah, late 80s.
Late 80s.
Mm.
And then you started thinking about Mexico again, or what?
Well, we would go do evangelistic services in Durango and Zacatecas, where we were from.
Mostly among Spanish people?
Mostly among Spanish people, yeah.
The Mennonites kind of just thought you were...
Yeah, by this time, I think we found that the effectiveness was a lot more among Spanish than among Mennonites. In Mennonites, because I got back and I got excommunicated for driving a van, and I still till this day I'm not.
You got a second excommunication.
I did. Well, what they told me that I was released from the All Colony Church, but then later I was told that means the same thing. Okay. Well, and I said to them when they came and they told me, I said, I admire you guys, appreciate that, because I excommunicated myself from you 2 years ago. That I admire your patience. It was very obvious that I was never going to come back here.
Yeah.
I made it very obvious. And so, but and I'm still at that position I have still today. If you want to live that way, blessings to you, right?
Yeah.
But if you have to live that way, then I would say, even if the cage is of gold, it is a prison.
That's right. So your connections in Durango and Zacatecas and stuff, was that from the Mexicans that were here? And then you were going back to some of their hometowns to preach?
Yeah, we would, even with some Mennonites, evangelical people, by this time the gospel had come to Durango. There were some gospel churches in Durango. Mm-hmm. Those Mennonite pastors would go with us too, and then we would and then we would go to villages and set up a platform on the streets and preach 3 evenings in town 3 evenings.
And people would come to hear?
Yeah, a lot of people. This is very interesting. We done this in the later years. We did this in Patos area. We went to this town. Henry Thiessen took me to this town where most of men are killed or are in the States or somewhere, because that's just as long as I can remember, there's always been a very violent. They're kind of in the mountains there. We went to that town. And I was shocked of how many people would come to the services. And we asked later, and they said the Catholic priest had told all of his people to go to he says, you go there, they seem to be very effective. And the Catholic priest would have sent his members to come to our...
I see.
Yeah, that was interesting to me. But
we'll take it, right?
Yeah, why? Of course they would have. And I think that position is a very good position. It's not about building an empire here, right, or a denomination. Is building the kingdom of God. And
so if you can see someone else as being more effective, it's okay.
Absolutely. Why would I hold somebody and then they would not go make it to heaven. Right? That would be
It's
foolish.
not like a contest where you're trying to make Coke the most popular, right?
Yeah.
Like, you don't want Pepsi here, let's keep Pepsi out. No, we're all trying to feed the people.
Yeah, and the Bible very clearly tells us that God has got one church, right? We're different groups, but if He's got only one church, He doesn't.
All true believers belong to one church.
All true believers belong to that church, yes.
So then you were back and forth to Mexico to Canada.
Yeah.
Take mission trips like a few weeks at a time, or?
Twice a year we would try to do it. And I was working still full time. And I don't know how much time we have here, but...
well, whatever it takes.
Whatever it takes. Okay, well, I think some people will be really interested in it. And a lot of people don't know how came we to Veracruz, because we had no... I mean, there's no connection. No Mennonites in Veracruz, nothing that we... But we were here already in the Spanish ministry. By this time, Mexican Council knew that we were very effective in bringing peace, sometimes between laborers and bosses, and sometimes with even the workers. They would have a fight, and we'd go there and be peacemakers. And so the Mexican Council calls us up and they said, we have this boy in prison that is going to be in prison for a long, long time if he doesn't get any help. If I could go and see if I could talk to him, because he wouldn't say nothing in his defense, right? So then I went there and talked to him, and he did open up and told me what he thought had triggered this accusation against him, but that he was not. But he said, it's okay, I'm fine.
It was a false accusation.
It was a false accusation. And so that ended up when he was supposed to go back to court and be sentenced, Mexican Council called me up again to see if I could go to court and translate. Well, that was a silly thing for them to do, but because court will never have a translator that's not registered, and I didn't know that either. But they ran me down. I mean, they buried me almost. Who do you think you are? And I said, Mexican Council called me and said, Mexican Council, we will call them in a bit. They will never do that again. They know better. And so, anyways, I sat there in the back of the court. And I don't like courts, and so, but I was there to help this boy where I could. And he didn't have a lawyer, he was just a current attorney was defending him. And the current attorney had spoken to me and asked him if I was willing to help him. And I didn't, at this moment, I didn't really know what the accusation was. And then so the judge asked me to come up there and read something to me, but I was zoomed out and didn't pay attention. I just thought, I'm going to see this guy in jail probably once in a while or whatever, and communicate to his family. That's what my perception was of him, helping him. So at the end of the judge gave me the copy of the paper that they had made and says, you go sit in the car and wait for him and he'll be there in half an hour. And I thought, who's going to be here in half an hour?
I thought he was going to jail.
Yeah, who's going to be here in half an hour? So I go into my car and read the paper, and he was released under my custody for 6 months. His accusation was sexual abuse. I have $5 at home.
Oh man!
Anna doesn't know nothing about this. And I'm bringing this man home. I prayed. We prayed nights. We were watching and praying, not for his soul,
for the protection of your children.
My children, yeah. So we would go check the rooms of my kids frequently. And see, the thing was, if there's any suspicion, if there's anything that looks odd, you have to call the police within 2 hours. If not, then it's 3 years in jail and $5,000 fine for me, right? If I don't call in within 2 hours. So it was at about 2 o'clock in the morning, and I heard a noise. So I looked outside. we could see his room from our room, and the lights were on. And I looked, I couldn't see any shade that he was walking around or anything, because sometimes from the light bulbs you will see movements, right? And I couldn't see nothing. And I looked at the clock and I thought, well, I'll just time it and call the police. And it was windy, but the moon was full moon. And one of the times the leaves were moving a little bit, I saw something under a tree, and I saw it. And I just saw that it was him on his knees with his hands in the air. And I said, in peace will I lay down now and sleep, because only you make me dwell in safety. But you got him, Lord. You got him, Lord. So I am
told. He was out there giving his heart to the Lord.
And in the morning he told us that he had given his heart to Jesus. Yeah, and so then through that, he would then, his parents would always call to our place.
Was this in Canada or in?
It was here, yeah. We were living on number 3 highway at that point.
Okay.
Yeah, and his family would call, and of course to our phone, and we'd always answer. So they'd talk to us for a bit, and then, of course, then they talked to their son. And so that kind of, over the phone, built a little bit of a relationship there. And so they were, and the family were the family were very grateful that we would take care of their son, right? He was a great man. He could cook, he could fix cars, and he was just a very respectful boy. And so then he started preaching to his family, right? He's sharing the Bible. You know, Mom, Dad, read this psalm at night, every night when you go to bed. Read a psalm before you go to sleep. And so, and then when because we would already go, you know, like I said, we would go to Mexico preach. And at this time, we had an invitation to come to Guatemala to preach in Guatemala.
Okay.
And we were going to go to also to Campeche, and to see. I have a sister in Campeche, and then we were going to go to Guatemala, and then we drive right by there, right? And they said, "You drive right by here. Why don't you stop? Have a free night, couple of free meals." And of course, with our traveling, we never rented a motel.
You always had some connection somewhere.
Most of the time you sleep in a truck for a bit.
Oh, okay.
And sleep in a truck for a bit. And so, yeah, and then when we went down, we came there at 11 o'clock at night, and we left 5 o'clock in the morning. So I thought, should I ask him? That's kind of rude, you know, it's just... So we drove, and this voice comes into my heart and says, if they're not going to be saved, that blood is going to be off your hand. And it kept on in my heart, and it was heavy on my heart. And we had agreed that on our way back we were going to stop there for a whole day. We did. And as soon as we stopped, when we came back, I thought, I'm going to get rid of this heavy load. We were probably had sat 15 minutes. I asked them if they would ever consider giving their heart to the Lord. And they started crying. They said, yeah, we were so hoping that you would lead us.
Because their son had been telling them now.
The night before, when we went past there. That's why I was so bad, because the Lord had prepared all the ground and just needed to be planted, right?
Wow.
And so, yeah, they did. And there was 5 people at that time that accepted Christ. Then we did over the phone, what now, and so on. And then they said, no, don't make sense. Over the phone, it just doesn't sink in. When you're here talking to us, it's just so much better. So then they said, what would it take for you to come here? And so that broke my heart. So then we would go once, twice a year. I was working full time, but my boss was so flexible. And said I had a phone call from Mexico. For how long are you going? He knew immediately that if I said I had a phone call from Mexico, there's nothing that would hold me back. I'd go and preach.
I see.
And then they would all do all of the most precious, where they'd cut it down and do the junk off when I was gone, and just kind of take the best iffy stuff out, which could probably make a good grade, and all sell all the rest for pellet. And then when I come back, then of course I had to work. Then I really had to catch up again, but I was just blessed, and they would keep on giving me my paycheck or a couple of.
So they kind of supported you while you were out on the mission field.
Yeah, and so that was really neat. And then we would do that first we would just go to them and then said, this is a lot of money to be invested. And then I told the people there, said, go and find some pastors, see if we could do some evangelistic crusades at nighttime, different towns, like you get platforms on the street, and we do that there a lot. Set a platform, close the street for 3 nights, and we have to get a permit, right? But that's easy to get.
Okay.
And then we set a platform up, bring music groups in,
and most of these people were either Catholic or didn't have an understanding of the gospel at all.
No, most of the people. There was Christian churches that would come and supported to bring in, but no, we would preach to those that were in the houses, and we had, if you know, Mexican cultures, they have they have these humongous speakers, and they crank it up all the way, even if it's distorted a little bit, but it's got to be loud. It's got to
be loud, eh? So you would turn your speakers loud with your microphone too, then?
It was, my voice was heard.
Your voice is loud enough as is.
Yeah. So and a lot of people give their heart to Lord. And, if you I'll tell you one of the stories that was just a little creepy story of one of those first meetings that I had there. And I would take all those that had been saved, I would take them with me at nighttime to the crusades, and then in daytime I was minister. But we were in this town preaching, and there was a lady way in the back. She was doing all of these signs and faces, and I thought, that's weird. And then when I gave an altar call, I was done preaching and gave an altar call. She was the first one came. But then she came to these hisses like a snake and all kinds of weird stuff. So first I go down, and I had 2 singers with me that I knew very well, and I told them, so we're going to stick together. And somehow they had wandered off somewhere else. So she comes walking up, and I go down and I lay my hands on her, right? She flies in the air, lifts up about at least a meter in the air, flies like 5 meters back with her head on the ground. And I thought, oh, she's done. I thought
you didn't. All you did is put your hand on her.
Just put my hand on her, and she was flying. And then I go on close to her. I was more concerned about me now than about her, because she's got killed.
What kind of power is this? Or afraid that you had killed her somehow?
Because I laid my hand on her, and everybody saw that. And so then I go close to her, and then she got a tongue out. I mean, this thick, bigger than her mouth, and this long, and started flipping it. And foam came out of that tongue there. It just black, that tongue. It looked awful. We prayed, and then ladies would come around and start praying, and this would go away. Second night, same thing happened.
Same woman.
And then I already told my guys, I said, we agreed we stick together. So they came right with me, and as soon as I lifted, I hadn't even put my hand on her yet, I lifted up my hand to pray for her. Again, she just lifted up in the air.
So but then the devils were somehow controlling her, right?
And then these guys caught her, and they struggled. They couldn't hold her, but at least she didn't fall hard, right? They laid her on the ground, and then we ministered to her. I don't think that night we prayed for anybody else. We just prayed for her, and then ladies, pastors, women, wives would come and minister to her. And they had all night. They had taken her to church, ministered to her the whole night, prayed for her. She got freed, still in church today, this day. She's a first, but then she was the third night when she came. She was mad at me. Says, I had a lot of customers always, and now I have no customers.
Customers for what?
Witchcraft.
Okay.
She
had powers.
She had witchcraft. She was practicing witchcraft, and so she was mad at me because now it didn't function, didn't work anymore.
Okay.
but I mean, she didn't know the truth yet. But now she's the Lord straightened her out. We've seen a couple of those things in Tierra Nueva, one in the mountain. There's this witch doctor too that came to me, and he said, I'm going to destroy you tonight. And I said, well, if yours is bigger than mine, then I will never preach the gospel again.
There you go.
But if mine is more power than yours, then you're going to accept him tonight.
This sounds like Elijah up on the mountain.
And he says, that a deal? And he said, yeah, it's a deal. And so he stood right in front of the pulpit. The whole service, while I was preaching, he stood there, just singing, showing signs in the church. Of course, probably not got nothing out of the message, but they were praying, right? They were praying, and finally he just wore himself out. And I was pretty much too. I'll be honest. It was hard. It was hard.
Because you're constantly being distracted by him.
Oh, yes, they're distracted and feeling this force, right, against me. And at the end, it was just kind of go up and walked outside. And so I finished my message, and then saw him sitting out there by a hydro pole. Walked up to him and he said, so what do you think? Well, he says, yours is obviously bigger. I lost. So the deal then still there, you're going to accept the one.
You were able to tell him about Jesus.
So he did accept Jesus there. So
wow. And so now, I mean, you've been up and down through those little villages and in the mountains and all over the place in that area. You said you had there's 7 little congregations there now?
7 that we have started, and then another one that is, another 2 that is affiliated with us.
Okay. And there's just endless work still.
Oh yeah. There's
lots of villages still that wouldn't have the gospel.
There's very few that don't have any. I'm not going to preach there, but I'm going to support in another village not very far from us. And I didn't know that was there, it existed, but that apparently has no gospel church. We're going to do an evangelistic church, or I'm going to support that evangelistic crusade, July the 5th through the 7th. That is going on there, and
okay.
We do expect, and then there's a lot of fasting and praying going on already for that.
We have a young couple from church, Greg and Bethany Clausen. They're training with Ethnos Canada.
Okay.
It's a mission organization that used to be called New Tribes Missions.
Okay, yeah.
And so they would go to tribes that had no gospel, no church at all. And so they've been training with them for a couple of years now.
Oh, wow.
And then at the end of this season, I think in December, then they're supposed to be prepared to go and find a place to go and minister to. And they're leaning towards perhaps somewhere in southern Mexico. Oh. And so they're not sure where yet, or where God might lead them.
It would be nice to have them there. We have a couple of places where there's, in this town, obviously, there's no gospel. There's that's still, and then we have another couple of places there, way up, a little bit up in the mountain.
Okay.
And there's a place for it, but wherever God leads them, right?
Yeah.
Because we certainly wouldn't want to misplace them.
That's right. Well, they're a wonderful young family, 6 young daughters.
Wow.
And just have a real heart to serve God.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Praise God.
Anyway, I'm sure we could go on and on and on.
Oh, yes.
But how do people support you? What do people do to contribute to your missions?
Well, we have a little bit of we have a few people here in Canada that do a monthly, it's a very small amount. We were supported by Lighthouse and we agreed as soon as we would get our pension, then we wanted that money to be able to go to some other young or somebody to support them, that they could have then the freedom to not worry about their financial income, as we did for so many years. Right. We struggled and gave everything. We gave every penny for the mission that we had. And a lot of times, even our kids now, they talk about where other people would have been fed and they were being left hungry.
Oh boy!
So, they understand, right? But yeah. So that's what we do. We have trip like this. We can claim that as, and that's most of we do. We do very little other support wherever we go. Sometimes God blesses us tremendously. We were in the States. I don't know if I should say this, but they blessed us with $12,000. That was for our own personal use. They said, for the mission we will do something else, and
Wow.
And so
So God provides one way or another.
Oh yeah, no, we have when we thought it was going to be tough, we have never had it as good financially as we do now.
So you're not really necessarily looking for more support?
Not necessarily. If we would get any support, we would use that support to help other pastors that are struggling, and then some needy people always come to our place. And
so is there a website or an email or anything like that people can reach out to you? And
yep, hopemission50@hotmail.com.
hopemission50 at hotmail.com. I'll try to put that in the notes on the video too.
Certainly. And my phone number is in Mexico's, I'll have to probably say that, 924-132-5760.
Okay.
So
I'll write that down yet too and put that on there, and hopefully you'll get some more support.
Well,
there's more work to be done.
Yes, absolutely. And there's pastors in the mountains. If you listen, see this. There's pastors on the mountains, they live off 50 pesos a week.
What is 50 pesos?
It's like $350 a week. That's what they live off, and then they eat stukrit, we used to call svinskrit, pig, that weeds that we would call feed the pigs. That's what they cook and eat, and then off the fields they get their food. But if there's somebody that would blow the love bless them, you could do it personally too. Come there and do it personally, or just even kids.
Well, I mean, I've got an 18-year-old and a 17-year-old daughter. You met them just a bit ago, and they asked me the other day, I'm off in the wintertime. What would it take to go and visit them and see what this is all about, right? So there would be opportunities for that kind of thing.
Absolutely. If you have anything to bring to them, it can be pair of sandals. A lot of people have, or just simply buy some packages of some food and package it in small packets and go around, give it to them, and this is what we do. We had a flood in last year in Tabasco, next state from our state, and we got some support, and we would bag these packages of food and with cleaning stuff. We've been there before, so we know what to do. We brought it in there, and God gave me a really unique message for that. He said, this is what we bring you. They were so happy to get that. So this is what we bring you. It'll last you a week, 2 weeks, whatever, and it'll be gone. You've seen us, and you'll forget us.
Mm-hmm.
But we're going to offer you another gift that's eternal.
There we go.
And if you accept that, He will never forget you, and He will be with you all the time. This is a simple message, and people were just crying. You could see that they understood. Just a very simple, down to earth, some messages.
It's kind of like the woman at the well. Jesus said, "If you would have known, you would have asked me, and I would have given you water that would never run dry."
Yeah, right?
Spring up.
She was tired of getting water.
Yeah.
And so people are receptive.
So one more question, if you don't mind. You're in your early 70s. You should be just relaxed and retired and drinking. And why do you stay so motivated? What's driving you?
Well, for me, I am retired. I put new tires on my vehicles.
You're retired, eh?
I'm retired, and I've seen. I think the most motivation that gives me is here and there. You don't hear it very often, but here and there you hear that I heard the gospel. I understood the gospel because you preached.
Yeah.
And to see those life transformed, it just doesn't allow me to quit.
Amen.
And I had a lot of back issue. I was on crutches completely. And I didn't give up preaching. They invited me to come to Chihuahua and preach there, and I was on crutches. I couldn't stand to preach. And you remember, I didn't hear, right? It's frequently the last time I preached.
You were
I was sitting, right?
Okay, that's right.
Yeah. So I couldn't stand, and so now I can again. And so I said, there's nothing in this world that I want to live for 1 minute. I have a lot of stuff. A vehicle, we have 4 properties, small properties, houses in Veracruz. But there is none of the things that I possess motivates me to stay 1 minute longer on this earth. But the only thing that I'm willing and want to live another 60 years, if God gives me the ability to keep on strong for another 60 years, is to bring somebody that was like me, that had no hope, bring them the hope. That's why we call it Hope Mission. There was hope where there was no hope.
Amen. Paul says it this way. He says, the love of Christ constraineth me.
Yeah.
It moves me. I can't. I have to, right? And then this other passage, Paul says in 1 Corinthians chapter 16, verse 15, he says, I beseech you, brethren, ye know of the house of Stephanus, that it is the first fruits of Achaia, and that they have addicted themselves to the ministry of the saints.
It makes you high, yeah?
Yeah, it's like, I have to do more. I can't stop now, right?
Yeah.
So I appreciate it, man. It's such a joy to see that, I'm now almost 40, turning 40 this year, and to think that in 32, 33 years, whatever, that I could still be passionate for the Lord and still want to serve Him. Right?
Absolutely, you will be.
Amen.
You will be the fire that I see in you, and what you're doing. Different way the way that I do. I'm not good in technology.
I'm learning technology. I'm not very good at it either.
but I want to tell another story. Can I?
Sure.
Actually, it's 2 stories. It's pretty similar. We went with a church. I was also, as a translator. We went to El Paso,
Texas,
in Juarez, Mexico.
Okay.
Juarez, Mexico. But we were in El Paso in the airport. That's where we landed, and then they were going to pick us up and take us over to Mexico. This was way back in the Desert Storm. I don't know if you remember that.
Mm-mm.
But the war in Iraq.
Oh yeah,
was called the Desert Storm. And there's these soldiers walking by and back and forth there in the middle of a lot of people in the airport. There's always a lot of people. And these soldiers walking back and forth, and I thought, wonder where they're going. And I had pretty much a clue where they were going, right? And so I thought, they probably have families, they have probably kids. They're probably never going to see them again.
Right.
So I had this real compassion. They were back and forth. My buddy beside me, he told me later, he said, he had prayed that those soldiers would go away because I would embarrass them in the middle of all the people. And so I remember, and he told, we met him 2 weeks ago. He told me another story that I had forgotten about that. But these soldiers go back and forth. And so then all of a sudden, I thought, if I don't see this again, that's going to be off me. And so I said, Lord, send them back one more time. I promise you that I will go and talk to them. So they come just as my direct. They came right walking back. 2 of them. One didn't come back with them. So I walk up to them and I said, "Are you allowed to talk to civilians with me?" I said, "Yes, sir." I said, "Can I ask you a question?" "You don't have to answer if you can't. If you're not supposed to, it's fine. Understand." And says, "Can I ask you where you're going?" And I said, "Yeah, we were going to go to a Desert Storm."
These were American soldiers?
They were American soldiers, yeah. And I asked him, "Have you considered that that's a possibility that you'll never come back again?" He says, 98%. And I said, "Do you know where you will be going then if you don't come back?" And they asked me, "What do you mean, sir?" I said, "Well, the Bible talks about there's 2 places where a soul goes to when they died, and it's hell and it's heaven. Which one of those would you choose?" And they said, "Heaven, of course, not hell." And I don't know where they would have known about it, but
sure.
They said, "Do you know that how you can get there?" And they said, "No, sir." I said, "Would you allow me to pray with you so you can accept the Lord and make sure that you go to heaven when you don't come, if you don't come back?" "Yes, sir." Took their hats off. Big spot on the floor, tears, everything else. They accepted Jesus Christ in the middle of the traffic in the airport. One other time we had gone to Mexico, and I was really tired. I had preached 3 times a day in 7 days, and I was really tired. We were on our way back, and all these police, they were always stopping me, and I thought, do I look like a criminal, or why do they stop me and let other people go? So I'm complaining in my heart, right? And all of a sudden the Lord asks me, why do you come to Mexico? Why I come to preach the gospel?
Preach the gospel, not to those people, though.
To whom? And then he asked me, to whom? To the lost. What about them? I said, oh, Lord, please forgive me. Next time I will do that. And we had just driven probably half an hour since I have had this talk with the Lord in my heart. In my heart I talked to him. There was another missionary that went with us. She had gone to Bible school twice to learn how to evangelize. And she was with us, an American from Michigan. And so then we go on the road from this road onto a major road that goes to Matamoros, and there's a gas station right just about 100 meters off that intersection. And we stopped there at the gas station. We needed to fill up, and there's this, and we were stopped again. There's about 10 guys right away surround me and asking me questions, where do you come from? So I tell them, and then, so what do you do? What did you do? Preach the gospel. And so then a lot of guys came around and listened, right? This is a real different conversation that we've ever heard. So quite a few come around there, and so then I got this message, and I said to them, I thank you that you're here. Somebody probably would meant to do me harm, and you disarm them so I can get safety to my destination now. But I'm going to tell you about a young soldier that did exactly that to you. There was somebody out there waiting for you to pass by to kill you. And there was a young soldier that disarmed that murder. And now you can, if you want to, you can save to your residence. I said, where did that happen? How do you know about that? We don't know. Where did that? I said, in Jerusalem. There was that young soldier. He gave his life for you.
That's right.
So that you can make it safe to heaven if you accept him as Lord. 17 soldiers gave their hearts to the Lord. I gave them a Bible. We had Bibles. So they set their rifles on the side and read their Bibles. And I thought, if their boss will come now and see that they're reading their Bibles, I'd probably be in trouble. That's gonna happen. But
there's opportunities everywhere.
It's so interesting. I've found it later so many times. People like that, soldiers, they know their life is on the line all the time.
Yeah.
And
they're risking their life for what? For money, for a job, for a reputation. What is it? And so if they know then that they at least have a place in the hereafter, then they can do it with some joy and conviction.
Yeah, and then a lot of times we classify bankers here in town. They're probably itching for somebody to tell them the gospel because they've got perfume on, whatever. We think, they're so much higher than we. But in reality, I have found out, rich and poor, they're all empty.
Everyone needs Jesus.
They need Jesus. Thank you, brother.
Thank you, man.
It was awesome.
God bless you.